It is Thursday, May 11th, in the week that I think will be known as the slowest news week. The slowest news week in quite a while. But who knows? We're in the age of Trump. Maybe this will be what a slow news week looks like for the foreseeable future. I am filling in for Tom because he is working on a documentary on climate change, and I'm going to be here today and tomorrow. We've got great shows for you. And to kick it off, I have the distinct pleasure and honor of having John Nichols on the phone with me. John is the national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine and a preeminent thinker and writer. And John, it's just a real pleasure to have you on the show with me.
Well, you're way too generous to me, but I'm honored to be with you.
So, John, I have to admit that I'm really happy to have you on the phone because I am at somewhat of a loss for trying to wade through the implications of everything that we've seen this week. And so I just want to kind of ask you, how are you seeing this?
Well, I'm seeing it as a week where a lot of things that we knew were going to be challenges and concerns in a Trump presidency came to a head. And when I say we knew, what I'm talking about is that as we examined Donald Trump, there was always a lot of debate about, how he would serve as president and what policies he would follow, who he would empower. But one thing that we were absolutely sure of, going back to his reality TV show days, is that he likes to fire people. He likes to make big decisions in very dramatic ways to remove folks from positions who don't fit his agenda, who don't fit in with what he likes. What's fascinating about this week, though, is that he chose to do so in so remarkable a way, so really kind of over the top way. This obviously we're talking about the firing of James Comey. That I think he may, and I underline that word may, have undone himself, at least to some extent. And let me explain two ways in which I think that is the case. First off, nobody has to be a big fan of James Comey. You can have all sorts of criticism of him. You can have great frustration with him. You can even note that Donald Trump had the power to fire an FBI director. But when you fire the director of an agency that appears, by all accounts, to be investigating your associates, your campaign, potentially, again, we underline the word potentially, even your own actions, you're not just firing somebody because they're not doing the job in the way you like them to do it. You are firing them because you don't want them to continue to investigate you or your associates or your campaign. Again, all this, stuff that's been talked about. And so what you end up with is a situation where even those who may defend your right to fire someone, even those who may accept that the person you're firing isn't the greatest player in the world, have to be concerned about how and why you are doing it. There have to be fundamental questions. So that's the first thought that comes into play. And it has unsettled not just Democrats, but a lot of Republicans, because it was done in such a ham-handed and really bizarre way. You didn't even have the guy in the same city. It was done apparently on a very fast timeline. It was done in some incredibly bizarre ways, especially references to questions of whether he was under investigation. Trump emphasizing in his letter to Comey, thanks for telling him that he wasn't under investigation. And so you have this whole kind of strange approach to it that, I think has unsettled Republicans. I think it's loosened up some Republicans, particularly in the Senate, who have suggested that this is a problematic situation and become more open to inquiries and investigations. So all that's number one. And a quick number two. The most damaging thing that has been done here is that the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions, who got caught out in his testimony to the Senate, answered no to questions about ties and contacts with Russians, and then turns out that he had those contacts, recused himself from inquiries into these issues, and then here in this bizarre situation is actually recommending removing the head of the FBI. Sessions undid his own recusal, abandoned it, and I think put himself in an incredibly difficult position for anybody who's paying attention to what's going on. I think he damaged the Department of Justice terribly. I think he damaged his own already tarnished reputation. And he also called into question the timeline and the approach of this firing of the FBI director. So you have two very major things. One, I think a loosening up of the discussion about how Trump is approaching these things, causing even Republicans to be very concerned, to a real exposure of Sessions as somebody who can't be trusted at his word.
And I think it loosening up Republicans, I think I think it has to happen. And I want to get to the, I think maybe political naivete that comes out of the Trump White House often, not understanding the need to have good working relations with Republicans on the Hill. And I want to return to that, but just focusing on the Democrats right now as well, and just like political, and there are deeper institutional issues that have been brought up. I mean, with Sessions, it looks to me like there is even at least a case to be made that he's put himself in a position where impeachment could be on the table, or that he hasn't followed the rules that he himself set up for himself. He's supposed to be helping put in place the next director in the search for the next director of the FBI, which is investigating Russia and everything that happened with Russia. And yet Jeff Sessions said he was going to recuse himself. So there's so much here. But on the Democratic side, just politically, it feels to me like I don't see any reason at all why there shouldn't be absolute total unity on the Democratic side to now oppose Trump in literally every single thing that he tries to do until there is some independent investigation into Russia and what happened with Russia and the campaign. Because mainly in politics, because why should they? Why should the Democrats give even a millimeter at this point when Donald Trump has just thrown this very this amazingly un-American looking action and called into question his general competency to be the president of the United States of America. So what do you think about that? The resistance in the grassroots is emboldened, but also I feel like the resistance from Democrats on Capitol Hill has to be emboldened by this action.
I think you put a lot on the table there and a lot of important things. Let's pause to emphasize a couple of key points. First off, we don't know everything that has happened as regards Russians, hacking, interventions with the election. There's a tremendous amount of charges flying around, a lot of people saying a lot of things. What we do know is this. There have been expressions of serious concern as regards contacts between people associated with the Trump campaign in 2016 and people from outside the U.S. who may or may not have had as their intent some sort of intervention in the politics of the country. These concerns, again, sometimes really stretching into hyperbole, going too far, because we haven't confirmed all these things, are clearly alive in the land. People are aware of this, they're conscious of it, they're concerned about it. The FBI has clearly been investigating, and that investigation has not concluded all sorts of things as regards Donald Trump, hasn't concluded all sorts of things as regards his campaign, hasn't concluded all sorts of things as regards his associates. So what we say is this is open. This is something that is being examined. But if the news reports are correct, what we recognize is that in recent weeks, James Comey, as head of the FBI, became increasingly engaged with, concerned about these allegations, and saw avenues by which this inquiry should be expanded and advanced. There are reports that he sought more funding or at least more support for this inquiry just days ago. And so here we are at a pivot point where great big questions have been put on the table, great big concerns have been expressed. They go deep into the president's circle. They raise real concerns about him and people he's entrusted. You have obviously the inquiries as regards Flynn, but also others. And there's a desire to expand that, and then suddenly the guy is gone.
John, can you stick with us through this next break and stick with us to talk about this?
Yeah.
John Nichols, who is the national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine, going to stay with us and keep talking about this extraordinary action that Donald Trump took in firing the FBI director. We'll continue this discussion right after this.